right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Design Lab Showcase. My name is Eric Heckler, and I am the interim director of the Design Lab, and also in the School of Public Health as well. The performance you just heard was kindly delivered to you by Catherine Schulmeister, UC San Diego Music Department student and doctoral candidate, and Nicholas Sanders, the New England Conservatory of Music alum. Thanks, guys. That was really great. I love listening. So we ask that you all please mute your microphones during the speakers and presentations, and also please change your view to speaker view. And we'll get started in just 1 minute. But for those ASL assistants, please go to participants and pin participant ASL interpreter Kara Long. Okay, and so we shall get going then. So I hope we have all been set up. Before we get started, I'd just like to note that this event is being video recorded. So if you prefer not to be recorded, please make sure to turn off your camera and mute yourself. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you will enjoy the event, learning something new, and have a great time. So let's get started though. So why is this event happening? As many of you already know, the Design Lab was established in 2014 by the founding director, Don Norman. And on December 31st, 2020, Don retired from his role as director, leaving a legacy of value and impact. During the 7 years of its existence, the Design Lab grew from a handful of people to over 200 active members that include faculty, students, staff, designers and residents, and affiliates. We have also managed to hire our own faculty in conjunction with over 30 different departments and labs, and the numbers grow. We've developed more design courses, including our most popular one, Design 119, Design at Large, which has been attracting a wide range of students from both UC San Diego and other educational institutions across the country. We're currently offering a design minor program and have received approval from the university to start a graduate specialization next year. Our transdisciplinary research spans across very different areas, including but not limited to social computing, design-driven transformation, human-computer interaction, large-scale individualized learning, people-centered automation, health design, work, technology and society, and many others. We're also very known for our work on community engagement, and Michelle Morris, who will be speaking next, will speak more in depth about it after me. There's no way that during this 2-hour slot, we can highlight everything that the Design Lab family has been working on. We will focus on honoring our foundations and cultivating the future of the Design Lab, seeking to address complex societal challenges via transdisciplinary and integrative design research, education, and community engagement. All of this as a tribute to Don Norman. This is a multifaceted event that will encompass several areas, showcasing our students, honoring the retirement of Don Norman, and introducing our new director. So before I pass the mic on, one last housekeeping, I do want to acknowledge and say thanks to those who made this possible. First, thanks to Olga McConnell, Ian Strelsky, and Steve Sanders for organizing this. Thanks to our many speakers who you will hear. And thank you to Don Norman and his wife, Julie, for creating the foundations that allowed us all to be here today. Thanks also to the university leadership, Chancellor Khalsa, EVC Simmons, SAVC Continetti, for making all of this possible. And last but not least, thank you all for being here. And with that, I'd like you to introduce you to Michelle Morris, the Associate Director of the Design Lab.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Morris. As Eric said, I am the Associate Director of the Design Lab. It is so wonderful to be here with you and to be celebrating today. I want to echo all of the thank yous that Eric cited and say a special hello to Don and to university leadership. We are all in for a real treat today. Not only are we celebrating the legacy, another one from you, Don, but also we get a glimpse of what intentional, inclusive, ethical design and design-driven innovation can mean on a campus, in communities, and as a model beyond that. I have the privilege of being one of the first, I think the first external hire in the Design Lab. And I was brought on to manage operations, big shout out to our amazing staff, but also to build the arm of what we call community. And in community, we foster and forge relationships and partnerships on campus, regionally, nationally, and globally, all with the goals of one, being a really active part of the region and the world that we belong to, so that we can be authentic, we can be relevant, we can be cutting edge, and we can be nimble. Secondly, for creating and prototyping new models of collaborative innovation and what we call real world engagement, so that we can enhance and then link to our esteemed faculty, students, staff, and practitioners. And then finally, to add to the mosaic force that is UC San Diego as a thought leader and catalyst for social and economic innovation. I am an entrepreneur. It's one of the other hats I wear in my life. And I can say firsthand that it is challenging to start something, particularly being a startup in a world-renowned institution like UC San Diego. It takes a lot of tenacity, a lot of courage, a lot of support, and a lot of passion. And today, you're going to see just a sampling of the broad portfolio of work that has come out of these early years. And as we close the founding chapter of our lab and honor our founding director, and then look to the growth ahead, I'd like you to observe today's presentations through three lenses. The first one is look for questions. We believe that the question is one of the most powerful tools we have as human beings, and certainly as designers. It is a way to keep us curious and humble, and to truly build the trust and empathy that is required for the kind of work that we do and the change that we aspire to. Secondly, listen for all the co-creation. There's a lot of expertise in the design lab and on UC San Diego campus, but we believe in and we practice collaboration. And we know that in order to what we call make to make sense, that it's necessary that we engage in inter, multi, and transdisciplinary work rather than to work within our own silos. And finally, listen for what I call rooted innovation. Much like today's theme, where we're honoring the past as we move into the future, we believe wholeheartedly in the lab and strive for being rooted in the rigor that is uniquely academia, as well as the values that we espouse in the design lab and the university. And that rootedness, that groundedness allows us to be free and to truly aspire for innovation, for disruption, and beyond. So questions, co-creations, and rooted innovation. But above all, enjoy yourselves. This is a conversation. Yes, we're celebrating together, but we also want to engage with you, not just now, but moving forward. We want to hear your ideas and your feedback and potentially collaborate with you. And in the words of Maya Angelou, nothing will work unless you do. So let's show you what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So the first part of our program is honoring our foundations. And with that, I would like to welcome UC San Diego Chancellor Pradeep Khalsa.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. And thank you for this invitation. I look forward to all the good work coming out of Design Lab on a yearly basis. But this year is special because this year we are not only going to see the good work and have the conversation, but we're also honoring Don Norman, one of my favorite people. I may not be one of his favorite people, but I can tell you he's one of my favorite people. And I can tell you, I'll also tell you why I think I may not be one of his favorite people. Don has had a very long history at UC San Diego. He came here in 1966. He started many things, but he was a founding chair of the Khalsa department. And then at some point he did some extremely good work, wrote extremely influential books like The Design of Everyday Things, like Cognitive Ergonomics, User-Centered Design, got elected to the National Academy. He was like the man in the area of design. And he was happily retired and sitting in his apartment thinking life was going to be good. And he had accomplished just about everything he wanted to accomplish. Except that what happened is in 2012, I came here, and as I looked at UC San Diego, and I thought about what this place should be doing, the strengths and what this place lacked, it was clear to me that if one thinks about undergraduate education, one can think about undergraduate education in the context of courses that you take or in the context of thinking styles that you must develop. So in my mind, it was more like thinking styles. So the thinking styles that I think you should develop in your undergraduate education are basically entrepreneurial thinking, design thinking, and computational thinking. But here was my big challenge. Even though there were a lot of people here in the area tied to design, the areas that Eric was talking about, there was no real integration and design being a recognized area across the whole institution. So one evening I was having dinner with now deceased Dean of Social Sciences, Jeff Ellman, and Scott Clemmer at Scott's house, and Scott will remember this. And we were just chit-chatting, and I was talking about how we need to build design in this area, design at UC San Diego, and who should be leading it. It turns out everybody was young and they wanted somebody senior to come and lead it. And the only guy they could point me to was Don Norman, except everybody thought he had retired. So lo and behold, I flew to San Francisco. I knocked on Don's door. We had a long conversation. And then soon after the conversation, he joined UC San Diego. I'm just going to let Don tell you exactly what happened in that conversation. But I must tell you that I have never been happier. I have never been more proud to bring Don back in a short period of 6 or 7 years. We have built design into a very strong area, even though from a non-existent program to now something called the Design Lab. I'm hoping that it becomes something bigger, something more stable, something more sustainable, and something that touches every part of UC San Diego. Because without design thinking, we as a human race would not be doing the things that we should be doing in terms of improving the quality of life for everybody. So with that said, Don, let me just say congratulations and thank you for taking the last 6 or 7 years out of your life and helping your institution, our institution, become a great place in the area. Left to me, I would have talked you into doing more time, but it should not come as a surprise to most of you. Don doesn't take my calls anymore. I run into him walking and he talks, but if I call him, he doesn't take my calls because he's afraid I'm going to talk him into something else again. But Don, we are going to miss you. But you have done an amazing job. There's an amazing legacy, and multiple generations of students, long after all of us are gone, are going to be remembering the impact that design is going to have on their education. So thank you very much, Don. And thank you, Eric, for leading this place in the interim. Thank you, Bob Continetti, for being such a good steward and interim dean for this place. I think your vision has really helped shape the design lab. And I'm looking forward to welcoming the new director. So back to you, Eric.
Thanks so much, Pradeep. I particularly appreciate that story. And I'm wondering if Don will share. I'm curious if Don's going to share more from it. So building on that history, particularly linking with our students, I'd like to now pass this over to one of our most senior students in the lab, Stephen Rick, to tell you a little bit more about the history of the design lab and his role within it. So,
thanks, Eric. So, hey, everybody. My name is Stephen Rick. I'm a PhD candidate in computer science engineering, and as stated, I have the unique privilege of sharing my brief take on the history of the design lab over the past 6 years that I've been a member. And to keep this brief, because history can be a long thing, let's jump right to the beginning. I first walked into Atkinson 1601, which at the time was the current home of the design lab, in September of 2015, when the lab was barely 1 year old. There was this mysterious allure to this new design lab that had enticed me to come to UC San Diego for my doctoral studies, and I wanted to know what it was all about. I was eager to find out what the lab was doing, especially at the intersection of technology, healthcare, and design. And when I arrived, the few faculty, students, and staff inside welcomed me, told me to take a seat, make myself at home. I was promptly invited to sit down with the human-centered healthcare design group, and I've remained ever since. Little did I know at the time, but this welcoming ethos would fuel the start of my doctoral studies and lead me to steep my spirit in design, all while kickstarting many new opportunities, both in academia as well as industry, to critically engage with technology and design. What began as a rather small and homogeneous group of maybe 30 people, mostly from cognitive science and computer science, rapidly began to evolve as the representation of design expanded. Today, the Design Lab spans more than 10 departments, represented by over 200 members. The most admirable thing here isn't the growth of our community either, but rather the fact that over these years, we've collectively taken the path less traveled. While it would have been easy to engage like any other lab in an R1 university, focusing solely on research and publication, the Design Lab has challenged this academic stance with persistence. We did not just want to do good research, we wanted to do important and impactful work too, pushing on this design as a way of thinking and a way of working to solve incredibly complex problems, practicing design for the many rather than the few. It still sticks with me to this day that our now former director, Don Norman, would regularly encourage us to stop and define acronyms, taking time to explain our research so that all present could understand and consider everything a prototype, even lab talks. This set the tone for a space where no idea was off limits, insofar as it was thoughtfully engaged. Things did not need to be perfect and polished to be discussed. It also set the tone for us to combat classic power dynamics in academia, lifting up students and staff to have a voice equal to that of the faculty. Nothing showcases that better than the annual lab retreat in 2017, when the students collectively revamped the agenda on the fly in a moment that we lovingly called our mutiny. Rather than respond negatively, this kickstarted our own practice of co-design, creating a space for students and faculty to design subsequent retreats side by side, so that time together could be put to its best use for all of us. By the time I'd reached the midpoint of my doctoral studies in 2018, the Design Lab had expanded beyond the boundaries of campus into our wider San Diego community with new initiatives like the Design Forward Alliance. We were working hard to bridge the gap between academic research and industry research, and rather than pursue such feat alone, we wanted partners. The Design Lab was now collaborating with industry both near and far to help empower those in the world with the tools needed to effect change in their particular sector. It was also building uniquely collaborative opportunities for students in the Design Lab, especially undergraduates, to get their hands dirty with real-world design experiences. We partnered with companies looking to expand their design teams with new talent. And as a grad student, this presented numerous opportunities for me and others to play mentor and manager, to learn how to better teach and to raise up others so that they could reach individual success while also supporting their team's endeavors. If it wasn't for the Design Lab, I don't think I could have met and worked with so many incredible people. This point about people is key. People are at the core of design, and thus the core of the Design Lab. And this brings me to the last bit of history that I'd like to share. Remember how I mentioned I was welcomed and embraced by the lab as a new grad student? Me, someone who was otherwise a stranger, was invited to work alongside others as long as we shared a common set of core values. And that core quality of the Design Lab's culture was something I wanted to see live long into the future. So I was ecstatic to find the group that encouraged and supported me as I co-led the Design Lab's culture team in 2019. I wanted to see future generations of students walk in and feel welcomed just as I once did. And not because they looked or sounded like me, but because they shared the core value of people-centered design. And collectively with other students, faculty, and staff, we dug in, observing our own practices and interviewing members across our collective. We found a lot of interesting things tied to cultural practices and ultimately designed a set of artifacts that have helped to set our foundation. We had a base with which we could create a space that is aware of how power dynamics, identity, privilege, and more all tie into creating and shaping the workplace. Because if design is not just to succeed, but to thrive, it requires a diversity of thought and representation. While the Design Lab is relatively young, I know the lab will continue to grow and evolve in the right direction, and you're going to hear about a lot more in the rest of today's presentation. So this has been a very brief history, but as you can tell, the history of our lab is a rich one. To all of my lab colleagues, my friends, thank you for the collective experiences we've shared. They are going to stay with me for the rest of my career and the rest of my life. I cannot wait to see where the Design Lab goes from here into the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. I just love listening to that, the story, the evolution, particularly that ending on the foundational importance of even inviting us all to think about how we design to be more inclusive and to better honor diversity. With that, I would like to now move on and introduce Sean Cross, who will be talking about one of our core pillars, research, and some of our key past achievements and research highlights. Sean?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Cross, and I am a fourth-year PhD student in the Design Lab. And I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about some of the recent research accomplishments that have been made by members of the Design Lab. So the disciplines practiced in the Design Lab are very diverse. They include fields such as computer-supported cooperative work, user interface design, urban planning and transportation design, and mental and physical medical informatics. In 2020, the Design Lab as a whole published more than one research paper per week on average, and members of the lab won many awards throughout the year. So I want to take a moment and highlight a few of those awards. Dr. Lillian Irani's book, Chasing Innovation, is the result of a decade of fieldwork in the city of Delhi in India. In her book, Dr. Irani provides a history of the entrepreneurial citizen in context with Indian political history and her own observations and professional experiences. This detailed account of the forces of social change won the 2019 American Anthropological Association Diana Forsyth Prize for Science, Technology, Engineering, or Medicine, and the 2020 International Communication Association Outstanding Book Award. Dr. Philip Guo's research spans the fields of human-computer interaction, data science, computer programming tools, and online education. His papers have won awards at the Conference on Human Factors and Computing Systems for 4 consecutive years, an unheard of achievement in one of the most prestigious venues in human-computer interaction. In addition to many recent Best Paper awards at top conferences, Dr. Guo also recently won the ISTA 10-Year Impact Award. So to tell you about her own experience working on projects that follow this philosophy, I would like to introduce Srishti Polani, who is a third-year PhD student in the Design Lab.
Hello, everyone. It's always incredibly fascinating to hear about the impact the Design Lab has, and in so many different ways. I'm Srishti, a PhD student in the Department of Cognitive Science. And through my doctoral research, I'm trying to make a just noticeable difference towards making web search more user-centered. Let me delve into the motivation of my research. Search engines are used daily by millions of people across the world to accomplish a variety of tasks, including navigating to other websites, searching for healthier recipes, shopping, learning about new topics, and how to do things. Back in the day, web search was envisioned as a cognitive boost to empower all of human intelligence, empowering people of all ages, all expertise, and all backgrounds around the globe with universal access to information to learn, work, and collaborate effectively. More recently, web search engines have become a primary mechanism by which people seek information to solve complex problems. However, search is only a partially solved problem, as it is currently optimized for specific, well-defined lookup tasks, like how many students attend UCSD or who's the director of the design lab. Searching can be hard if you do not know the domain, and overwhelming when you are working across multiple sessions, applications, devices, and collaborating with multiple people. The challenges of formulating effective queries to ask or making sense of the vast amount of information that's returned, combined with the open-endedness of creative work, can be tedious, often preventing people from reaching their full creative problem-solving potential. And this is what motivates my doctoral research, which aims to advance the current web search paradigm by building novel computational techniques that seamlessly integrate web search into the user's personal and collaborative workspaces.
Great. Thank you so much, Srishti, for sharing your work. It was really wonderful to hear. And I hope you can all see just a great example of the type of important groundbreaking research that our students and our faculty work on together. With that, I'd like to move on, because another key area in our work is doing wide-scale outreach and involvement in our community, including both our students, faculty, and community members. So one of the examples of this is what we call Design for San Diego, or D for SD. And we're going to have Steve Mcneil and Brian McGinnis tell you a little bit more about that. Take it away, guys.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, my name is Brian McGinnis. I'm a postdoc in the Design Lab.
And hi, I'm Steve Mcneil. I'm also a postdoc in the Design Lab.
So, like many cities, San Diego faces a range of complex civic challenges where no single person or solution can do the job. In 2017, the Design Lab launched Design for San Diego, or D for SD, an organization dedicated to bringing together communities for collective problem solving. D4SD aims to foster conditions where every single person can share knowledge, insights, and lived experiences, where people can think creatively and push deeper. In 2017, D4SD involved hundreds of people in a series of civic design activities over a period of 62 days that culminated in a design summit at Downtown Works.
However, in 2020, there were many unexpected challenges. The global pandemic forced us to think about new ways to design 6 feet apart. However, in 2020, there were many unexpected challenges. The global pandemic's been making us think about ways to design 6 feet apart. And while we initially had planned to host a big design event in the city library, we had to move all of that work online.
Our team created a unique series of online design jams for people to discuss and discover the challenges, to ideate and prototype solutions, and to create stories to help make long-term connections within the community. Each week, the design jams involved 50 to 120 people. During the design jams, expert facilitators led small group activities. Participants added questions, concerns, and ideas to digital whiteboards. Over 30 unique project ideas emerged to help address problems related to COVID-19, such as how we might reopen businesses and public transportation safely, and how we might provide social support for those living alone.
Yeah, so all of these events culminated in the D4SD Design Summit. On May 15th, more than 200 people attended an online summit to showcase the regional challenges and solutions that were identified and developed during those design jams. Unlike traditional designathons that focus on competition, the D4SD Design Summit is a unique opportunity to work collaboratively and build alliances. Through these alliances, participants and regional stakeholders were able to identify and advance promising ideas. And we were honored to be joined by two world-renowned designers, Don and Srini, who both gave inspirational talks about why community-driven design is not just beneficial, but it's essential to address the kinds of problems that we're currently facing in our region. We were also joined by local city leader, Barbara Bree, who talked about the region's most pressing civic issues to inspire participants to ideate together.
D4SD is so much more than just the design lab. What makes D4SD such a compelling initiative is that our process is deeply rooted in the San Diego region. 2020 brought together K through 12 and university students and educators and many others.
Yeah, D4SD would not have been possible without the generous support of all of our sponsors, our partner organizations such as the Educators Alliance, and the many, many people who volunteered their time to make D4SD 2020 a resounding success. And to wrap up, I'd like to finish with a quote by Don Norman. This is something that he said during the D4SD Design Summit. Invariably across the world, big projects fail. By bringing together a large number of small groups, each of which are efficient, fast, and creative, who together, when mirrored with all the other small groups, can solve the world's largest problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian and Steve. It was really great to hear about D4SD. And I hope, as you can all see, the Design Lab focuses on building community, both within UCSD and across the San Diego region and beyond. Oh yes, here are the organizers, as you can see. With these foundations, we've been making events like D4SD into ongoing initiatives so that we build these bridges and these connections between our research, our education, and our community. And with that, I would like to now invite Executive Vice Chancellor Elizabeth Simmons to say a few words on the importance of our link to the community, transdisciplinary research, and education across and outside of the UC San Diego campus.
Thanks very much, Eric. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Simmons. I'm the Executive Vice Chancellor here at UC San Diego, and it's a real pleasure to join Chancellor Khalsa, Senior Associate Vice Chancellor Continetti, Interim Director Eric Heckler, and of course, Founding Director Don Norman and other esteemed colleagues and guests to celebrate the past, present, and future of the Design Lab. I guess I'm the ghost of Christmas present, it sounds like. So I'd like to extend a special thank you to the founding director of the Design Lab, Don Norman. His insights have advanced design as a fundamental approach to problem solving, integrating user perspectives and real-world challenges to develop effective, elegant technical solutions. Now, when I arrived at UC San Diego a few years ago, I was already familiar with some of Don's work, as who isn't, and I employed some of it in my own daily life, as who doesn't. So it was a great pleasure to have the opportunity to actually get to know him in person and to learn about the Design Lab. Now, Don's unique perspective and his commitment to exploring the frontiers of design, art, and science have shaped what the Design Lab is today, a place that incubates transformational ideas and cultivates change makers. The Design Lab, as you've been hearing, fosters collaboration and engagement among students and faculty, research scholars, but also industry experts, civic leaders, and other community members to maximize the positive impact of discovery and innovation. Now, programs like Design for San Diego that we've just been hearing about and the Designathon demonstrate the potential that the Design Lab has to galvanize thinkers and doers and bring together diverse groups of people to address the really complicated challenges that all of our communities face, and that we were facing even before the pandemic, and that we will continue to face after the pandemic. So it's wonderful to see how Design for San Diego continued through the pandemic and showed it won't stop us. It won't stop design. We will keep going. Now, I had a lot of fun attending the Pepper Canyon Mobility Hub Designathon a couple years ago, and I was deeply impressed by how the students drew on one another's diverse skill sets within the teams that they'd been formed into. And I was also impressed by the quality of the ideas they developed in just a very brief time about transforming the future trolley station into a dynamic, multimodal mobility hub. And from the reactions of the Sandag leaders who were serving as judges of the Designathon, it was clear that they were very impressed as well. Now, more generally, the Design Lab provides students with myriad hands-on opportunities to work with and learn from people who are in the middle of some of today's most exciting societal transformations. And through transdisciplinary approaches and integrative design research and education and community service, by participating in all of this as partners, as you've already heard from some of our students, the students have the opportunity to develop the skills and experiences they will need to form lasting change. And all of these elements have helped make the Design Lab a really significant player in UC San Diego's history of innovation, and they will continue to guide the Design Lab moving forward. I expect that the impending move to a new location and the ongoing infusion of new people will represent powerful opportunities for further discovery and innovation. Well, today's celebration is turning out to be a delightful opportunity to explore everything the Design Lab has to offer, to hear from so many students about how it has shaped their own academic careers, and to learn more and think more about the future. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you all, and congratulations, Don.
Thank you so much, UBC Simmons, both for being here and for your continued support. So with this now, I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Taylor, who is a postdoctoral fellow who works closely here in the Design Lab. Jennifer?
Great. Thanks, Eric. Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer, and I'm a design fellow in the Design Lab, mentored by faculty member Eric Heckler and Associate Director Michelle Morris. And my role is as a postdoc, but unlike most postdocs, which focus on research and perhaps teaching, my role is a little unconventional in focusing on community. For the Design Lab, however, this kind of role actually aligns well with its three pillars of research, education, and community. So I'd like to tell you more about my role in this unusual postdoc, especially in the ways it supports new opportunities for universities via the Design Lab's community team. So today you'll hear a handful of projects that innovate the community team. For example, in a few minutes, you'll hear from one of our student researchers, Tabassum, who supports our design programming. As we advance approaches to design, we're building programs that speak to power, privilege, ethics, and equity. And she'll also give you a sense of some of the ways we create programs with and for stakeholders by having students, our community sponsors, and local designers work together to build design training that both helps our students be industry ready and strengthens design networks in our region. As another example in a bit, you'll also hear from Daniel Sa on his experience working with our team through our Designer in Residence program. In this role, Daniel has infused design into the City of San Diego's strategic planning while helping us together build a more robust design and innovation ecosystem across our region. So in my role within the community team, I work from end to end on programs to build up our capacities for doing community-centered and community-driven design. And this work does not exist in a vacuum from the roles I play contributing to research and education. I'd like to give you one example of what that looks like, focusing on the intersection between community and education. So during my postdoc, I've co-taught a class with Eric Heckler that applies design to address public health challenges and opportunities within our university and our region. In a past year, we focused on food insecurity on our campus. After reviewing reports about food insecurity at UCSD and elsewhere, the students began talking with stakeholders from our community networks to deepen understanding of these challenges. And at first, it's worth noting the students were really reluctant They felt like we gave them a pretty ambiguous design brief for an intractable issue, one that probably wouldn't budge unless we could get top university administrators to change policies. As students, however, deepened their relationships with our partners and applied design principles to explore solutions, they realized they actually had a lot more agency to make change, despite this being a really complex issue. In fact, when the students presented their findings at the end of the quarter, they discovered they had agency over something the administrators lacked. Specifically, the students had been able to free up an underutilized storage space for food distribution that neighbored the campus food pantry. And it was a space that was designated for grad students. So it turned out that the administrators had actually even been looking at this space for years, wanting to free it up, but in their role felt they didn't have the agency to make change. So in a matter of weeks, the students had managed to address a bottleneck that the administrators had been struggling to address for years. These rapid shifts that students can make were in part thanks to the hidden and complementary work of community capacity building and creating ways of working with stakeholders and cultivating relationships over time that students can tap into. And this work is critical for universities as a way of not only bridging theory and practice through real world experiences, but also as advancing praxis, which I see as supporting more emergent ways of knowing based on how we gradually act on and improve the world around us. So while universities often have research faculty and teaching faculty, I can tell you as someone who's on the job market that there are just a few academic positions here and there focused on community partnerships and coalition building. So what might it look like to have something like that here? This postdoc is a step in that direction, and I'm thankful for having a faculty mentor, Eric, who's been open to supporting my hybrid training as a researcher and educator alongside a staff mentor, Michelle, who's taught me a ton about business and innovation and how to effectively communicate with our partners outside the university in particular. So I'm grateful to Don, my mentors, the staff, students, and faculty in the design lab. And I hope the kinds of experiences that I've had will become more normative as we in the design lab cultivate an innovative model for universities that centers communities through design. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm just tearing up because I'm just so proud of you. That's just awesome. So yay. And with that, I'd now like to introduce you all to Tabassum Alam, who Jennifer just mentioned. So.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tabassum Alam. I'm a third-year undergrad student. I'm currently working with the community team as a student researcher supporting its design programming. Just to briefly explain my role with the design lab so far, we could move on to the next slide. I started this past summer as a novice designer with an eager and open mind to learn about what design was, what do designers do, and specifically what is so special about design at UCSD and also in San Diego. I started as a student volunteer with the community team, first just exploring what was happening here, what sorts of engagement and cross-pollination were happening amongst all the different projects taking place. Soon, I was able to join in with the Power, Privilege, and Ethical Responses team and work with many of different community leaders and community advocates within and outside of San Diego to help facilitate sessions geared towards growing empathy and ethical responsibility surrounding social justice issues. I was lucky enough to work one-on-one with many of our guest speakers to have a conversation on how we can workshop these sessions appropriately and really emphasize the key takeaway of ethical responsibility among our audience members. Also during this time, I was able to shadow the Connected Learning Pathway program, a program designed to give undergrad students a hands-on opportunity to explore human-centered design and work closely with community sponsors. I specifically worked closely with the content development team, producing many of the key elements for the first ever iteration of this program, starting from designing the activities and interactions for our participants with other participants, the community sponsors, and other design lab mentors. I continued on this past fall quarter as a program organizer and applying service design to shape the delivery of our program. This included conducting multiple check-in and interviews with our students and mentors, collecting feedback through surveys to identify any adaptations needed to tailor to our end users. And now, currently, I am working on more of the program evaluation research aspect of this program. I'm working with my other peer student researchers on going through a qualitative analysis using the same service design principles in understanding the learning outcomes of this program, any potential improvements we can adapt for future iterations of this program, or even for any other similar programs working with the design lab. we can move on to the next slide. Just to briefly talk about some of the things I'm really thankful for. First, if not the most important part, is an opportunity for growth and knowledge. As mentioned, I started out as a novice designer, just looking for more opportunities to learn from others. I've been really lucky to work with Jennifer Taylor, Emily Knapp, and Joyce Huang throughout this journey and learned so much from them and my other peers, which I'm extremely grateful for. I also like to credit my work with Design Lab in allowing me to find my interest in the Coxside department and also in general to be more aware of interdisciplinary opportunities. Working with D-Lab, I got to meet so many more people outside of my home department, and from observing the passion in the work that they do, I've been really inspired in finding these more interdisciplinary opportunities for myself also. Similarly, I've also been able to explore my interest in research. As a first-generation student, I don't think I've ever imagined myself in such a place where I can be a part of a team and a larger community who is so invested in research and for a greater social good. I really enjoy all of the conversations I have with my colleagues almost every day through this position. And in terms of personal next steps, I'm very excited to continue pursuing my passions and interests in this realm of design with the help of Design Lab. I'm very excited to continue watching the Connected Learning Pathway program grow, which I've seen from since its birth, basically, and help connect more students with the Design Lab. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tabassum. Thank you for your such important work on our power, privilege, and ethical response work. And if I may note for a moment, this is a very important part of the lab, as you can hear from everything Tabassum just brought up. It is also an essential element of this new design specialization that I mentioned. Actually, every student who will walk out getting our specialization in design will be required to take a 4-unit course on power, privilege, and ethical response, which was, I want to give a quick brief shout out to Lillian, Ronnie, and Camille Nebeker and I. We were working on crafting that within the original thing. So, and this is also a central part for our Design a Large series. So just want to really thank you, Tabassum, also for really helping us to further flesh out the importance of that within our design community. And with that, I'd now like to introduce you to one of Lillian Ronnie's students, Udayan Tandon, who will be talking more about how we engage in design for addressing complex political issues. Udayan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Udayan Tandon, a second-year PhD student in computer science, and I'm going to talk about public platforms and the role they can play in creating equitable infrastructure. We understand public platforms as platforms deployed, built, and maintained by publicly funded agencies. But before we get into too much detail, let me go over some background. Before joining UCSD as a PhD student, I worked for 2 years at Microsoft Research India in the Technology and Emerging Markets Group, designing technology for the auto rickshaw or tuk-tuk drivers in Bangalore. The design lab at that time seemed like the ideal choice to continue working on design projects engaged with communities. And sure enough, my work here began with the start of a now 1.5-year-long research collaboration with United Taxi Workers San Diego, a taxi worker advocacy organization supported by the San Diego Labor Council. They were working towards modernizing the struggling taxi industry in San Diego, while asking the city's regulatory authorities for support to help them better compete with Uber and Lyft. While building this collaboration, we learned that taxi drivers being predominantly immigrants meant that UTWSD engaged in a lot of work for immigrant communities, with the most recent example being a grocery distribution drive during the pandemic, and thus had a deep understanding of problems in those communities. Also, that drivers valued the freedom of being small independent business owners. Some of them tried switching to Uber and Lyft, but discovered that prices were arbitrarily changed on them, and the rating system prevented them from building relationships with their customers and communities. But at the same time, they understood that to sustain the taxi industry, it needs to modernize and adapt to technology. These learnings enabled us to co-develop an idea for a public platform of integrating taxis and mass transit. San Diego is a sprawling region where the first and last mile from public transport to destinations can be several miles, too far for many to walk or bike. The vision of this project, a product of San Diego Metropolitan Transit System and United Taxi Workers San Diego coming together, supported by our research team, is to connect taxis to public transportation by integrating a smart transit app into MTS's transit planning and payment system. A pilot of this idea aims to connect the upcoming MTS Blue Line trolley to taxis. It'll see us create a transit app prototype that will increase public transit ridership, reduce vehicular miles traveled, provide improved jobs by being a viable source of business to taxi drivers, and by connecting San Diego communities to job centers via affordable transportation. The pilot will also strengthen ADA-compliant accessible transportation by designing this pilot with the MTS Accessibility Committee. While the pandemic did put a brake on the efforts for this project, it also gave us time to strengthen our relationships with MTS and find more partners and support. At this moment, our team is intensely working towards making this pilot happen and actively seeking funding for it. The experience of co-developing this idea with UDWSD and MTS revealed the role of design in creating public platforms. It revealed that the engagement and expertise of communities can innovate, drive, and sustain platforms for equitable infrastructure transitions. Design methods not only create tools and artifacts, but also build and reconfigure human relationships. Socio-technical scholarship understands these relationships as the human infrastructure necessary for any and all infrastructure. Methods such as workshops and interviews can be tuned to amplify their capacity to build such relationships. To close, throughout this project, I learned that community-engaged projects are hard work, especially when combined with the pressures of academia. They have their ebbs and flows of progress and require commitment towards building relationships. The story of this project as it began would be incomplete without the Design Lab, which has become a community and infrastructure for this kind of work. It made possible for me to collaborate with Dr. Lily Irani, my advisor in the communication department. It has made available multidisciplinary expertise from public health and cognitive science, among others, for this project. And the Design Lab staff is always available for support, organizing events just like these to make such projects possible.
Thank you so much, Udayan. Your work is so inspirational to me. I would like next to introduce you to Mona Powell and Lillian Nguyen, and what they're going to be discussing is their work, a startup that actually grew out in part from the design jams that was mentioned earlier from D4SD, as well as other work that they were doing. So Mona, Lillian, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mona Powell. I am the Wellness and Engagement Manager with UC San Diego's Housing, Dining, Hospitality.
And I'm Lillian Nguyen. I was a fourth-year undergraduate student in the Cognitive Science Department.
And we're here to present Generate Good, which spun out of the 4 days of D4SD. It is a virtual volunteering platform that connects those in need to those who want to volunteer their time. Next slide, please. So the problem that we were trying to solve and how I got involved with D4SD is that I am, again, in charge of wellness for housing, and I was very concerned with the mental health of our students that were stuck in their rooms. At the same time, our line staff, our custodial, our dining operations staff are considered essential and had to be on site. A lot of them had kids, and for many, English is their second language. So as we had our challenges trying to pivot to virtual, they had it even worse. And so I wanted to do something about it. And I contacted just some colleagues from the education department, the Center for Student Involvement. And what came about was Triton's Tutors, a virtual volunteering program that connects a UCSD student with a child in a K through 12 system, and we target lower income schools. So during COVID, of course, we all saw the shutdowns. It also shut down a lot of volunteer organizations, yet there are a lot of people that still needed help. And with COVID restrictions, hiring freezes, a lot of my colleagues that were trying to do the right thing and trying to mobilize students had technical constraints, resource constraints. So it was difficult to actually get people to be of service. And so I brought this up to Eric, who I work with for the Healthy Campus Network. It's a totally different thing. And he was like, Mona, just come to D4SD, come to this design lab. I didn't know what it was, but he's like, just come in as a subject matter expert, see what happens. And here we are almost a year later, helping kids, seniors, small businesses, and we even have interest at the small group of college students who are trying to do things in an orphanage in Kenya. So basically that's the story of how the problem we're trying to solve with Generate Good. Next slide, please. we had a video that we wanted to show, but with the technical difficulties, I'm just going to paraphrase. So this is our use case. These are actual students, staff, and their children. So this is Victoria, who's an international student. She is a visual arts major in her second year, and she's been volunteering with Triton's Tutors since May. And we have Christina, who at the time was in second grade at Burbank Elementary School, and which is a Title I school in San Diego. And Judith is Christina's mom, one of our senior custodians here on campus. Victoria talks about how at the height of, or the start of COVID, I mean, everything was shut down and she wanted to help, but she didn't know how. And so she was super grateful that, you know, she saw the flyer for Triton's Tutors and how the experience has been so fulfilling and has given her that one human connection every week to look forward to. And then Christina, who in the video, she talks about the day that her school shut down and how her grandma's house is where she lives with her mom. She had to take her laptop to her friend's house, and because they didn't have any internet connection. Actually, I think the very first session she did with Triton's Tutor, she was on her mom's phone because they didn't even have the Chromebooks out to her school yet. And then Judith, who in the video just talks about how grateful she was to UCSD for even having this program, because for her, technology, she didn't know about technology. She also speaks very little English, and had to be on site. So now she's sending me screenshots of Christina's grades and how grateful they are to have this program. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so as Mona was mentioning, like Triton's Tutors has had this huge impact on not just the parents and the children that are getting tutoring support, but also like the tutors that are volunteering their time. And so we see Generate Good as this kind of platform to scale the positive impacts of programs like Triton's Tutors and to reduce like the administrative and resource constraints on them so that they can focus all of their efforts on helping communities. And we're trying to build an online community of volunteers to create a culture of giving back and make volunteering time as easy as possible for people. We hope to mobilize volunteers to reduce equity gaps, starting with education, but also eventually scaling across other areas like Mona mentioned. We've been running pilot programs, connecting volunteers to seniors to combat loneliness during COVID, connecting design students to small business owners who are trying to pivot and create an online presence for themselves. And also the college students in Kenya who are working with their local orphanages and their communities. So we potentially see this as a global solution spanning across various areas. And so we'd also like to extend a special thank you to Don and Julie Norman for the Norman Design Fund, which has been like essential in helping us facilitate these pilot programs. And also thank you to Eric Heckler and Stephen Dow, who have been our advisors throughout this past year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona and Lillian. As a facilitator for you guys during D4SD, I'm just so excited to see where you guys have gone and where you're going. It's just so wonderful. And I want to, you guys mentioned the Norman Fund, and I want to make sure everyone knows what that is, particularly since this is in part a celebration of Don. So the Norman Design Fund, which was established by Julie and Don Norman, provides small, rapid allocations of funds to support student activities in human-centered design. The goal of the fund is to enhance and encourage human-centered design work by UC San Diego students. Since its inception in 2018, we've had 6 recipients of the Norman Fund, and we continue to welcome more applications. So now, if we will, moving on, of course, 2020 has been a tough year for the entire world. But our students and research keep persevering no matter what, as you could just hear, providing their own contribution and better understanding and seeking out solutions to global problems, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Our next 2 speakers will start talking about their work on COVID-19. So with that, please welcome Danaya Karim.
Hi, y'all. My name is Dania Karim, and I'm a 4th year undergraduate student, public health student working with the Recode Health team. Today, I will be presenting a summary of a workshop that took place back in September as part of Design Fiction's Future Epidemiology, Ethical Response, and Public Health series hosted by the Design Lab. We wanted to involve the UCSD community in crafting a safe environment for students, faculty, and staff to come back to campus and to hear what people thought about a digital exposure notification system that was being considered for adoption by UCSD as part of Return to Learn, and that was later actually adopted by California State in what we now know as California COVID Notify. So we wanted to learn what might influence acceptance of such technology by the UCSD community. So the Return to Learn program was implemented by UCSD to ensure a safe return to in-person learning on campus, and it was founded on pillars like risk mitigation, viral detection, and intervention. And there were activities put in place to carry out these pillars, such as constant cleaning and sanitation, symptomatic and asymptomatic testing, and contact tracing, which involves the exposure notification system we're focusing on today. Essentially, the exposure notification is a passive process to tell a person if they've been in contact with an infected person using their phones. So the workshop was 2 hours long, and it started with a presentation delivered by Dr. Camille Nebeker, where she gave an educational overview of digital health technologies, the Return to Learn program pillars, and how community engagement can influence design strategies and facilitate public deliberation. Next slide. Following the presentation, Dr. Nebeker facilitated a 15 minutes open workshop where we discussed things like what might influence acceptance of the digital proximity exposure notification system, what might be a barrier for adoption, and how we should consider and think about potential risks and benefits of such technology. After that, attendees were randomly assigned to one of 3 breakout rooms, each representing a specific stakeholder within the UCSD community. Room 1 was students, room 2 was staff, and room 3 was for faculty. And they were all asked to consider questions like how their specific stakeholder would want to be involved in planning and governance, and how they would want to take the next steps, and what might increase the value of that technology or be a barrier to adoption for that specific stakeholder. Each group had exactly 30 minutes to go through the questions, and I, alongside 2 Recode Health team members, were in charge of timekeeping and ensuring that the questions were answered within the specified time period. Next slide. So after the workshop, we analyzed our notes, and then we figured out 7 themes that showed up across all groups, and they all linked back to trust, whether that is trust between the UCSD community and UCSD, or between California State and California residents in case of the California COVID Notify. Adoption and success of the exposure notification depended on trust, and trust had to do with privacy and people wanting to know how their information was being used and their rights were being prioritized. Education, transparency, and communication all had to do with people wanting clear communication, accessible communication, and wanting to know every step and the risks and benefits associated with the technology. And accountability came from lack of trust and people wanting a third-party oversight to ensure that their rights were being protected. We shared everything that we learned with the Return to Learn program and the exposure notification team for them to implement and then use as principles, because in order for the technology to succeed, it had to be built on trust and clear and transparent communication, as Maria will explain next. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanya. So let's now, as you said, bring up Maria Martinez about her work on the COVID-19 tracking app, California Notify. This app has received wide recognition, including from the state governor and California Governor Gavin Newsom, and had over 4 million activations during the first week of launch alone. Maria?
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria del Mar Martinez. I'm a UX UI designer, and I'm here on behalf of Dr. Spencer and the team to describe our work developing and deploying the CAN Notify Explore notification system. Next slide. And next slide, please. So, working with the State of California Department of Public Health and the Governor's Office, we convene a diverse team with expertise in infectious disease, communications, design, ethics, privacy, who volunteered to solve a time-sensitive and an important problem. Our goal was to help UC San Diego develop and pilot test the CAN-notified system to achieve a successful outcome, one that would be accepted and adopted across the UC campuses and potentially California and beyond. That means that we needed to work with those in our community to create acceptable, accessible, and trustworthy communications. This approach is called participatory design or human-centered design. Next slide. So the human-centered design process involves working with people who represent the community. In our case, we first wanted to hear from a local UCSD community, including our diverse staff members, undergraduate and graduate students, faculty, and administrators. The design process is critical to acceptance, adoption, and subsequent success. So we're grateful to the UCSD leadership for their forward thinking and supporting our human-centered design process. Then we held our first 2-hour workshop on September 23rd, just before the first CAN notified pilot was initiated at UCSD. And with the work working in New York, Canada, and San Diego, we held 3 design sprints where participants convened on Zoom and used Jamboards and breakout rooms to ideate and prototype. And also we find motivations and barriers to use an ENS system. So we dialed what resonated with respect to the graphics, images, and text used to communicate the CAN notify system. Next slide. These 3 workshops involved nearly 100 people from across campus who identify as faculty, as students, and as staff members. Our design team took the communications and initiated the development of a website that was beta tested at UCSD and several other UC campuses, and this led to the current state site that is cannotify.ca.gov. Also, we deploy a quantitative and a semi-structured survey to obtain feedback on the website, and we continue to collect data with thousands of short web surveys. Next slide. Here are some examples of the designs, which are simple and clear. Next slide, please. And we ask those who participate in our design workshops and college at other campuses to look over the California COVID notified website and provide feedback. At the end, we had 144 responses, and taking into account the feedback, we made modifications to image and word choices. And because our UC community of employees and students represent a cross-section of the population of California, we have increased confidence that the program will be acceptable to Californians. However, we recognize many groups have not been reached. Next slide. Finally, as you can see, we have nearly 9 million users to date, which estimated 22% of California citizens and 34% of smartphone users in California. That said, there's a large disparities in regional adoptions and among traditionally underserved populations that must be addressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maria, for the work you're doing for us in our community in California and beyond. So, and moving forward from the COVID theme, let's hear a little bit more research from Colin Berry. Colin?
Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Berry. I'm a PhD student in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department here at UCSD. I'm in the Design Lab under my research advisor, Professor Edward Wang, one of the new faculty in the Design Lab in the Electrical Engineering Department. Today, I'll be presenting on our ongoing research project to develop an at-home Alzheimer's disease risk screening that we are conducting as a collaboration between the Design Lab and the UCSD Center for Mental Health Technology. Next slide, please. Alzheimer's disease is a neurodegenerative disease that diminishes the quality of life for millions of people around the world. Although there is no cure for Alzheimer's disease, early detection is key for patients to seek treatment and lessen the debilitating symptoms. Our research focuses on pupil response as a biomarker to identify Alzheimer's disease risk. It has been widely shown that pupil response is highly correlated with cognitive function. Basically, the harder you try during a cognitive test, the more your pupils will dilate. Professor Eric Granholm, our clinical collaborator at the Center for Mental Health Technology, previously published a study of nearly 1,000 participants suggesting that pupil dilation is also highly correlated with a brain region called the locus coeruleus. This brain region is one of the earliest sites of degeneration in Alzheimer's disease. The figure here is a simplification of some of the results from the study. You can see that effort, measured by pupil dilation, builds up as the cognitive task becomes more difficult, and then it drops as the person gives up. In the plot, the red line corresponds to a person with higher risk for Alzheimer's disease, and the blue line corresponds to someone who would be cognitively normal. The interpretation is that even though people in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease may perform well in cognitive tests, and they may not show any signs of cognitive decline socially, they will be compensating for their early cognitive impairment with greater activation in the locus coeruleus. This activation can be measured via pupil dilation during a cognitive test. This is the basis for the digital biomarker of pupil response that we are focused on in our current research. Next slide, please. Currently, we're using the IR cameras on newer smartphones to develop a smartphone Pupilometer app to measure pupil dilation during a cognitive test. This app allows the user to self-administer a cognitive test for Alzheimer's disease risk screening. Using at-home measurements, we hope to extend the previous study, which only shows trends in accumulated data, to make individual screening possible based on pupil response. With at-home measurements, we can record more measurements over an extended period of time in a comfortable setting. Additionally, we are applying classical machine learning methods to improve feature selection for classification. This could allow for a low-cost Alzheimer's disease risk screening in at-home environments that could reach far more of the population than current methods that are done in clinic with expensive equipment. Next slide, please. As a first-year PhD student, I was drawn to the Design Lab for my interest in transdisciplinary research, but I've already found so much more. For this project, the Design Lab has been influential in proper design and implementation of our study. In designing the smartphone app, we spent much of our time considering an efficient and interpretable user interface, specifically for older adults. We spent time researching designs of similar applications, speaking with experienced researchers in the area, but most importantly, we have been and are continuing to work with members of this target population so that we can incorporate feedback into our design and the overall experience. Through virtual deployments with users, we were able to create an inclusive design through testing in real-world situations. This process provides an improved user experience and pragmatic study results. As we continue our research, we will continue to use and innovate these design guidelines and to improve ourselves and our research and continue the legacy of the Design Lab and its founder, Professor Don Norman. Thank you.
Wow, Colin. I feel like I just keep saying wow because I'm just always more and more amazed at all the just awesome work. That was fantastic, Colin. Great work. Moving in, we mentioned before that we have these three pillars, right? Community, research, and education. And I think you've heard a lot now in terms of our work in community and research, but I want to make sure you hear a little bit more about education. With that, I'd like to invite Annika Olives to tell her personal story on how the Design Lab and design education have impacted her life. Annika?
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Annika, and I graduated from UCSD's Cognitive Science and Literature/Writing programs last June. I've been working at the Design Lab for the last 4 years, and I'm currently the lead social media and content strategist. Next slide, please. So I actually started college as a psychology major. Human behavior fascinated me, which I learned from taking an AP Psych course in high school, but I didn't yet know what I wanted to do with it. During my first fall quarter, I decided that I wasn't interested in pursuing research, and I didn't want to go into teaching. But because the psychology department at UCSD was more research focused, I was feeling a bit lost, unsupported, and worried about my future come winter quarter. Next slide, please. Enter Andrea Anderson, one of the lab's designers in residence at the time, who introduced me to Mcneil Morris, the lab's associate director. I still remember the first day I visited the lab, a bright place scattered with notepads, whiteboards, and of course, colorful sticky notes. I changed my major to cognitive science shortly after that visit, choosing to specialize in design and interaction, and started working at the Design Lab within that month. I'm a writer, and for me, design was compelling because it was another way of telling a story. Much like a good book, design follows a plot, from ideation to prototyping to iterating. But again, like a good book, this process doesn't always look elegant in real life, and it's up to the designers to navigate challenges that arise along the way. At the Design Lab, my first project was working on a design-driven transformation initiative researching the best ways to educate industry leaders on design thinking and human-centered design. As part of this, I interned at SAP during the summer of 2017, getting the opportunity to learn from design leaders in Silicon Valley and beyond. When I returned to UCSD as a second year, I started working to build up the Design Lab's social media presence, and that is where I still am today, running the social strategy and leading copywriting for the lab's digital marketing efforts. You would think that design and social media have nothing in common, yet I use much of my design knowledge when it comes to writing captions or even searching for the best articles to publish. Next slide, please. 4 years ago, I thought that the term design referred to graphic design or visual art. Yet UCSD and the Design Lab showed me that the field is so much more. Design is a practice of being human-centered, of having empathy, of making people's lives that much easier, better, and happier. At its core, it is interdisciplinary, and it prides itself on being so, because that is the only way you'll be able to reach effective and comprehensive solutions. In my Design 160 class, my group worked with low-income populations in San Diego to prototype a job-finding app. In Engineering 100D, we came up with innovations around the problem of low participation in the US Census among college students. And when I studied abroad in Europe, I built on my previous design knowledge, taking classes that taught me how to be critical of technology, media, and design itself in a productive way. As a young person living in the intersection of health crises, political uprisings, and racial tensions, my design education has only become highlighted over the last year. Design touches everything, from the products we buy, the services we use, and the systems we live in. In the future, I hope to combine my skills in writing and design to build a career in content design and UX writing, creating accessible, enjoyable, and meaningful experiences through words. I know that human-centered design will be something I continue to use and reflect on in my daily life, and I have the Design Lab and UCSD to thank for building such a solid design foundation in myself and in my classmates. Design is power, for designers create everything tangible and intangible in our society. I'm confident that design has the ability to make our world a better place, but that is only if we choose to dig deep, create thoughtfully, and continue searching for a brighter tomorrow. Entering the Design Lab on that fateful day in 2017 altered my undergraduate experience and career path in more ways than I can count. And I'm excited to see how the Design Lab continues to shape the next generation of designers, researchers, makers, creators, and students like me for years to come. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Annika. What a great, inspiring story. So first, we're getting more into future. So, and I imagine we're getting thrown. So I invite everybody to stretch for a second, just to wake up. Cool. Okay, now into the home stretch. We have many aspirations looking into the future, including providing more educational and research opportunities for our students, and also working more to be a meaningful partner and to serve the San Diego region and beyond. Our most pressing plans are to become a separate academic unit, to offer more design classes, to establish degree granting programs. We need all the help we can get, and support is greatly appreciated. One of our biggest supporters has been our new acting dean, Senior Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, Bob Continetti. And I'd like to invite him to give a few words now. Bob?
Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for that introduction. And it's kind of hard to follow those outstanding student presentations. It's really impressive what's happening in the Design Lab. And that just makes it all more of an honor for me to be here today for the Design Lab Showcase, joining Chancellor Khalsa, Executive Vice Chancellor Simmons, and all of you on this occasion, honoring Don Norman's most recent retirement, this time as founding director of the Design Lab. I've been serving as Dean Designated for the Design Lab since 2019, and in that time, I've been impressed by the success of the lab, as we've seen examples of today, in establishing human-centered design as an academic discipline on our campus. The lab has a structure and growing educational program that I think puts it on a trajectory to become an enduring part of UC San Diego. The design minor has already grown into one of the most popular on campus in only 2 years, and the recently improved graduate level specialization in human-centered design marks a formal expansion into graduate education, joining the research efforts that we've heard about in some of these presentations. Further expansion in undergraduate, graduate, and professional education programs all look like promising directions that will attract a new generation of students and contribute to making the world more human-centered for the benefit of all of us. Of course, we wouldn't be here today absent the efforts of the visionary founding director of the Design Lab, Don Norman. Don, as we've already heard, is a legend in the field of design, and we've been most fortunate that he returned from previous retirements to rejoin us here at UC San Diego over the last 7 years to make yet another lasting contribution to our university and society at large through the Design Lab. His achievements both in academia and industry and contributions to the modern evolution of design thinking through impactful books like The Design of Everyday Things make him a truly international leader in the field. His influences have shaped a new generation of designers intent on addressing complex societal challenges via, as we've heard today, transdisciplinary and integrative design. And that's a mission that's embodied in the research, education, and community engagement activities of the Design Lab. So Don, I've greatly enjoyed all of our meetings, even the recent remote ones, and thank you sincerely for coming back to UC San Diego. The key element of the impact of the Design Lab is the breadth of the field. And that's why it's in this special place as an interdisciplinary unit reporting to me. The Design Lab faculty come, as we've heard, from across a broad spectrum of the campus: social sciences, engineering, arts and humanities, the School of Medicine, and our new School of Public Health. Design itself thrives in an inter, trans, and multidisciplinary model. And I'm pleased that I've been able to work with the Design Lab to provide a route for continued growth in research and education outside the usual paradigm of discipline-based academic divisions in schools. And now, for many reasons, we are poised for an exciting new chapter, the future. The Design Lab will soon be moving into a premier location on campus in the new Design and Innovation building at the nearly complete trolley gateway to the campus, at least as I call it. I believe that once we get through the COVID-19 pandemic, the trolley is going to be a real game changer for our campus. It will allow UC San Diego to integrate far more than ever before with our community and directly connect the Design Lab to the downtown UCSD Innovation Building, where there will be a community-driven design hub. This is going to allow strong engagement with regional communities to inform classes, research, and collaborative projects. So with the foundation and infrastructure built by Don and all of his colleagues here today, I believe that in the next phase of the Design Lab, there will be ample opportunities for design to grow and influence on the campus. The Design Labs, we've heard, provide students unique opportunities to bridge what they learn in their classes with what is referred to in the Design Lab as connected learning pathways, focused on industry and real world readiness. We've seen examples of this in the presentation today, and I experienced it myself when I visited the Pepper Canyon Mobility Hub Design-a-thon put on in collaboration with the San Diego Association of Governments back in the fall of 2019. The sense of excitement among the students working on next generation transportation ideas for our community at that Design-a-thon was palpable. And I look forward to the day, hopefully soon, when we can engage in interactive in-person events like that again. Efforts like the Design-a-thon play a huge role in helping to change the prevailing perception among some that design is only aesthetic or perhaps about the physical environment. Rather, it really represents a spectrum of human inquiry that becomes an essential tenet of inclusive and ethical innovation, as we've heard in some of the presentations today. In the coming years, I look forward to the Design Lab continuing to develop into a regional and global leader, exemplifying UC San Diego's commitment to being an innovation catalyst for our region. Ongoing efforts to raise the profile of design in our region are continuing apace right now. An example of this is the Design Forward Alliance that we've heard about, created by the Design Lab and regional design leaders in 2016. And it's now working with the Design Lab. They're co-leading an effort to make San Diego and Tijuana the first US and binational World Design Capital in 2024. This is an initiative endorsed by all regional mayoral offices and many business, cultural, and economic development leaders from our region. So it's a very exciting opportunity. Well, that brings us to the threshold of the future. And finally, as we prepare for the future, it's my sincere pleasure to introduce the new director of the Design Lab, Dr. Mai T. Nguyen. Mai joins us from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where she is currently a professor in the Department of City and Regional Planning, and also directs the Center for Community Capital, as well as the Equity and Resilience Lab. Her research has been focused on understanding social and spatial inequalities in society and evaluating programs and public policies for the creation of resilient, equitable, and inclusive communities. She's an award-winning teacher and researcher and integrates equity and inclusion throughout both her research and teaching. Here at UC San Diego, she will be a professor in the new Department of Urban Studies and Planning, and will be poised to expand the intellectual footprint of the Design Lab on campus at the same time that the Design Lab moves to occupy a central geographical footprint on campus and our broader community. Dr. Nguyen, Mai, if I may, I look forward to working with you and all of the members of the Design Lab as we enter this new phase. So I turn it over to Mai.
Good evening. What an incredible and inspiring night to be introduced to the Design Lab. I can't believe that this is just a small selection of the work that the Design Lab is engaged in. I can't wait to hear the rest of the many things that you do. And thank you, Senior Associate Vice Chancellor Continetti, for the kind introduction and overseeing the search process that I'm sure was made much more complicated because of the ongoing pandemic. And thank you to Executive Vice Chancellor Simmons and Chancellor Khalsa for entrusting me with this incredible honor of being the next director of the Design Lab. Throughout the last few months, or the many months that I've had conversations with faculty and students and staff and university leaders I got to hear about the hopes and the vision for the future of the Design Lab. And with each conversation, my excitement grew for joining the Design Lab. And I'm incredibly grateful to step into this role that Don Norman created, because he has truly created a dream job. As the founding director, Don has built the foundations of a boundary spanning and innovative space for academic research, education, and community engagement that really, truly, I mean, what I've heard today addresses complex societal problems and rapidly and nimbly. I mean, how quickly you've responded to the COVID-19 pandemic and using design to solve some of our pressing problems is truly inspirational and impressive. When I describe the Design Lab to others, I tell them that it is a new and innovative model for academic units, one that is novel and path-breaking, and that focuses on important and exciting research and community engagement to change society. And I think I've created a lot of envy among my friends and colleagues, not only because they want to move to San Diego with me, but now they all want to work in the Design Lab. I was asked to talk tonight about why I was interested in becoming the director of the Design Lab. And let me first say that, you know, on the website, when I looked at it, and, you know, the things that I've heard already about the Design Lab, was that I was impressed with the human-centered design research that is a central part of the lab. And I am incredibly supportive of this research, while also what I want to do is expand the lab in new directions. I'm an urban planner, and therefore I bring additional emphases on working at the community and regional scales. I was also delighted to learn that a lot of care has been placed into thinking about the future of design education broadly, but also specifically at UCSD. The Power, Privilege, and Ethical Responses course that I just heard about is a prime example of this. I believe that the Design Lab is at the forefront of shaping design education in San Diego, in California, but also globally. I'm thrilled that the Design Lab is integrated and engaged with the broader San Diego community, including Mexico, right? We just heard about making San Diego the world capital for design in coordination with Tijuana. And that's just so exciting, being a border city. But also, and importantly, that the focus of this community engagement is being ethical and equitable and inclusive, to have real systemic change and to tackle the root causes of thorny societal problems. The traditional models of design certainly haven't had this focus. The universities, in addition, the university's investment in the design and innovation building located adjacent to the trolley stop and then connected to this downtown hub for community engagement will really allow the Design Lab to be an important leader, facilitator, and convener of the design community in San Diego and globally. I could go on and on about why I'm excited to be the next Design Lab director, but I'll save some enthusiasm for when I start the position in March. I look forward to meeting all of you in person and hopefully very soon in the coming months, that this will happen in the coming months. And I look forward to working to shape the future of design education, research, and engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mai. We're so excited to have you join us. And personally, I can't wait to start following your lead. With that, we have two more key speakers in our design showcase. So we're excited to we would like to next invite Daniel Suh, who was mentioned earlier on, talking about his unique role as a designer in residence. Daniel?
All right, thank you. I titled my talk for tonight Shaping the Future Together, and we'll jump right into that soon. But as a means of introduction, I'm a UCSD alumni, graduated 2015, and also currently design in residence at the Design Lab and a board member for the International Affairs Board of San Diego. Next slide, please. So if there's one thing I want everyone to take away from my presentation today, the message is that the design in residence program to me equals simply empowerment. I felt the design in residence program through the Design Lab empowered me to do things I could never have imagined before. And so the first point I want to talk about is why I wish the Design Lab existed earlier. As I was graduating, I think that's when the Design Lab started to really accelerate at UCSD. And during my time there, I was a management science major. And I had an incredible time at UCSD, and it taught me really how to analyze facts and how to dive into data. But I felt that there was something missing. And the thing that was missing to me is how to imagine. I could go through the data and figure out what went wrong, what's the trend. But to me, as I was entering the workforce, it's like, how do I confront uncertainty? How do I imagine a brighter future? Where does that tie into my academic career? And so one thing I really missed about my time at UCSD was the fact that it helped me make incremental steps, but not exponential steps. But this is where the design in residence program kicks in and the Design Lab. And so as I mentioned before, I'm a board member of City of San Diego's International Affairs Board. Our task is to advise the mayor and city council about international affairs that impact San Diego. And so earlier last year, the mayor's office came to us with a project of, hey, we want to create San Diego's first tenure international strategy. You guys do it, get back to us at the end of the year. And obviously, I've never done this before, so neither has anyone else on the board. And we're kind of like, where do we start? I went through the data, and the data told us that we're not a global city, which I beg to differ. And the first partner I thought was like, okay, here's this massive, gigantic, thorny problem. Who could help us out? First name that came to mind was the Design Lab. So we established the partnership, and throughout the past year, we just had a lot of great interactions and ideations, and big shout out to Jennifer Taylor and Millie Knapp and the student researchers who really helped the International Affairs Board really take concrete steps to produce a living, breathing strategy document. And, I gotta say, just the level of engagement, professionalism, and the opportunities to engage the community, I think that was so new. And I think that was one of the most important aspects of the Design in Residence program for me, was the fact that we're able to bridge the gap between civic and community. For example, the Design Lab and the Design Forward Alliance kindly invited us to host a workshop at the San Diego Design Week. And this was the first time I've seen all of the members of the executive committee on the International Affairs Board really serve as facilitators, speakers, and so on. It's not some ivory tower or just some board that talks, but they were on the grounds talking with people in the community, getting feedback and learning from the people they were serving. So that was just really heartwarming to see. And I think that leads into the value of the Design in Residence program for me. It really accelerated what I thought was possible in my roles as not only a professional, but also a member of the board. And I think just exchange of information, of involvement, and the warmth truly, just seeing these people who our leaders in society, in the city, just really mingling with students, listening to students, hearing about it from widely different backgrounds. I think to me, that was a short-term value of the design and residence program, just making that bridge and continue to build that bridge. And the long-term value, man, I don't know where to begin, but I think really it trained me to see that every challenge is not an obstacle, but an opportunity to innovate the future. And just that mindset and understanding of a family here. I have the design lab community partners and the backing. That just gives me so much confidence to continue moving forward. And it gives me the inspiration to think of what bigger projects can we do? What bigger impacts can we make? And so next slide, please. And I just want to say, throughout our last year, our partnership produced a concrete piece of action, and this is an endorsement letter the board wrote for the World Design Capital. In addition to the project we're doing for the tenure strategy, the board also saw that this was a great way to elevate San Diego on the global stage and seeing that design is part of San Diego's DNA and making sure we're fully behind this, the city is supportive, and by working together, we can make sure San Diego is known for its design community and the innovation that happens here on a daily basis. So I just want to say a big thank you to the Design Lab. The Designer in Residence was one of the most pivotal moments of my professional career and personal, and I can't wait to keep working with everyone and staying in contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. As academics, of course, we love nothing more than seeing our students learn, graduate, succeed, have successful careers, and we love being able to continue to connect with you through programs like the Designer in Residence. So we love the partnership just as you. Last but not least, in terms of our showcase, we want to give a word for Stephanie Sherman. Stephanie, would you like to take it away?
Sure, thanks, Eric. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Sherman, and I'm a PhD candidate in visual arts practice. And my work focuses on the role of culture in the large-scale adoption and adaptation of socio-technical systems. My PhD work is advised by Dr. Benjamin Bratton, a world-renowned speculative design theorist who also serves on the Design Lab's advisory board. I've had the privilege of spending the course of my PhD working with the Design Lab community and automation teams as a designer, researcher, strategist, and storyteller. Throughout my PhD, the Design Lab has provided a platform for connecting interdisciplinary research, theory, teaching, and practice at city scale. And I've been so lucky to learn from my incredible mentors, Michelle Morris and Colleen Emmenegger, the ever-inspiring Don Norman, and other Design Lab faculty, researchers, students, and its extended San Diego family over these years. Next slide, please. Speculative design, like human-centered design, is a design method for addressing complex systems. Human-centered design centers the human being as the critical node in the design process. Speculative design considers systems complexity from multiple user perspectives and scales: human, machine, planetary, social, epidemiological. Speculative design is a means for addressing multiple kinds of futures: possible, plausible, probable, preferable. In the automation team, speculative design has meant using world building, performance, Wizard of Oz experiments like the one you see here, scenario planning, and design fictions to research the social, geographic, and cognitive implications for autonomous vehicles. In our projects with major automotive manufacturers, the automation team has combined human-centered design, distributed cognition, and speculative design to reroute the assumptions that engineers and manufacturers make, or don't make, about the paths for self-driving development, repositioning the futures and frameworks for the interactions between cities, people, and vehicles. Next slide, please. My work with the community team has taken shape in a series of citywide efforts to build, amplify, and congeal a design community in San Diego that is known across the globe. This has involved using a method Michelle Morris and I call catalytic design, which means assembling diverse players to cultivate a design ecosystem that can nimbly and dynamically activate partnerships between government, civic organizations, industry, and academia. In 2016, we hosted the first Design Forward conference, which in turn launched the Design Forward Alliance, which has been shifting the civic understanding of design as interiors and graphics towards design as a key aspect of an innovation ecosystem, one with the capacity and responsibility to shape economies, ecologies, and societies towards equitable and sustainable ends. I'm now the lead author on the San Diego-Tijuana World Design Capital bid for 2024, which frames our cross-border cities as a 21st century design challenge, a model for binational interdependence. We are proposing to demonstrate how design San Diego-Tijuana style takes shape in policy, urban systems, science, and health, an innovation ecosystem that propels our connected border cities as a prototype for the world. Next slide, please. I hope the future of the Design Lab includes more events like the Pepper Canyon Design-a-thon, which you've heard about a number of times tonight, which I proudly led the production of in 2018, working with Sandag and over 200 participants to develop design projects for the incoming trolley station. Big design events and challenges not only connect students to design through real-world projects, but create bridges to civic engagement, interdisciplinarity, and depth. This design formula is all about convergence, a large complex challenge, students from across campus disciplines, design mentors from across the university and community, science and technology, art and culture, a story that resonates broadly, and an environment within which to design that inspires the sensibility of the environments, services, and artifacts to be designed. The new Design and Innovation Building promises to be such a place, and it will be a landmark gateway onto campus from the new station. From my perspective, the Design Lab's at its best when it's bringing together people across the university, local and global design communities to do things that they could never do on their own. It can and should live its principles, designing in the world and in the wild, while generating generous and resonant learning experiences for all involved. If design is about continuously unfolding research, investigation, and change, then the Design Lab manifests the premise that everything can be and must be designed, from place to organizations to relationships to cities, from access to diversity and engagement. It is how we manifest knowledge, how we build a culture of curiosity and learning, how we put our theory into practice, how we mobilize communities, and how we tell our stories that ensures that our designs, however pragmatic or propositional, from the here now to the very far future, take hold in the world.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And what a wonderful way to wrap up the showcase portion of this. So with this, I first want to invite everyone to stretch again, stretch out, because we're moving now on to the last portion of our night, where we're going to be speaking more about Don's legacy and its impact, not just on the Design Lab, but outside of it, including the global impact of his work. I also, before we get into this, I just want to set a small note. You might have noticed this is in part a celebration of Don, but Don hasn't spoken. And that's intentional. This was Don's notion. He wanted to celebrate this by hearing all of the great work and impact that he has inspired. And so I just want to personally have a note of thank you to Don for creating this space for all of us. So with that, I'd like to now please welcome our featured guest speakers, widely known entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and Don's dearest friends, Arlene Harris and Marty Cooper.
Well, it's really a wonderful thing to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about Don. It turns out that Marty and I haven't known Don very long. It's been since he came to the school, but Don and I were both on the board of the Institute of Design in Chicago, and that's where I first learned about design. So if I can just digress a bit, just to a brief personal note, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and our way of learning was much like you've heard, to learn how to swim, you just throw someone into the deep end. So for my entire life, that's the way I learned. It was learning by doing without a formal education. And about 15 or 20 years ago, I was asked to sit on the board of the Institute of Design in Chicago, where I met Don. And that's when I learned about what design was. And what happened for me is I finally understood, after years of frustration of trying to manage interdisciplinary teams and people that were working on problems that I was trying to solve, why it was so frustrating. And the aha moment was that all of these individual people were working in their own silos, and I was working across those silos. And voila, that's where you need designers. And I didn't know that until, like I say, the last 15 or 20 years. Don entered our life here when he came to San Diego, to UCSD, and provided this intellectual underpinning for all the things that you all are experiencing and enjoying. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of doing. It's his legacy. He's got literally thousands of students that he's impacted their lives and changed the world. So I decided I'm going to write a little thing. So I'm the amateur designer here. No training in design, but boy, have I gotten a lot of wonderful understanding of what design is and what your challenges are. So I wrote this little, I've inducted myself into the Amateur Designers Hall of Fame. And I wrote something for Dawn and Julie, but mostly Dawn, because it's about design. And we love Julie, she's lovely. So here's what I wrote. We're here on this night to honor the heights that took us to new ways of thinking. To dawn it occurred, we needed new words for fixing the problems we're making. He defined in design the objectives to mine for humans with whom we're engaging. The best way to think, ideas we can drink to make what we do plain amazing. The man we hold dear for all that we hear, he's brought to the world with such vigor. Don Norman's the man we owe a huge hand and practice his teachings with vigor. Don's leaving to see life beyond UCSD, but no one expects him to silence, just finding his stride, fire blazing inside. He'll ply us with nuggets of brilliance. So keep making your mark. It's no walk in the park. You know that from years educating, you're amazing to all who've answered your call. Don Norman, we're anxious and waiting. And to that, Don and Julie, we love you.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. Marty?
Wow, was that inspiring or what? I really don't have much left to say after Arlene's thing, but I'll think of something. I have known Don for years, as Arlene just pointed out, and I am an advocate of human-centered design. I'm an enthusiastic advocate because I've learned right from the master and from his books. And I really don't need any reinforcement, but I want to express an anecdote that fully reinforced my understanding of what design is. I witnessed a presentation by the president of Verizon, one of the biggest communications companies in the world. Now, this guy taught for an hour. It must have cost him millions to put on this thing. And right in the middle of his presentation, he started talking about 5G. And his comment about 5G was, you've been waiting for 5G. And I thought to myself, boy, does Verizon need human-centered design, because I haven't been waiting for 5G, and I'm very unlikely that any of you have. They focus of Verizon is on the Internet of Things. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that 40% of the students in this country don't have access to wireless broadband, and yet wireless broadband is a fundamental part of the educational process. So I think Verizon has got some learning to do and learning about design. There are two messages I've got. One is what I just said, Verizon really needs us. The second message is it's really going to be hard to convince organizations like this. And it's an example of the courage that it takes for somebody like Don to create a new concept, to come up with a language to support that concept, because as you know, the English language before Don Norman didn't understand about things like signifiers and what's the affordables. I mean, as you can see, the stuff is still starting to penetrate. So we are about to see a revolution, and I have my viewpoint tends to be generational. I'm thinking about the long range future. I'm not sure that Don has been quite ambitious enough, because I'll tell you what I think the university of the future is going to be like. The university of the future is going to have a school of medicine. They'll have a school of science. They will have other schools, but they will also have a school of design. And part of the school of design, the major, of course, will be in design. The minors will be things like computer science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, because the one overall element of education is design. It's not all of these silos that Arlene referred to before. So Don, you have a legacy that is going to last many generations. Few inventors ever create something that has the lasting impact of what you have created. It's been a privilege to know you, and I hope that you and I can collaborate in the future. Thanks so much, Don.
Thank you so much, Arlene and Marty. That was great. Right now, without further ado, please welcome our next featured guest speaker, the president of the World Design Organization, Srinivasan. Srini.
Thank you, Eric. And also, it's really indeed an honor. So good evening to all the distinguished participants. It's been a wonderful 2 hour. I was listening to everybody and the details of the work that has been going on at the Design Lab. Dear Dawn, it has been my immense pleasure knowing you, and I'm very happy to be here today to be part of the celebrations of your work and dedication to the field of design. Dawn is known to all of us in one way or the other, right? As a professor, as a researcher, design thinker, an author, and a critic, philosopher, friend, family, or colleague. His passion for building and running the design lab at the UCSD is very highly commendable and highly recognized, and he has brought a lot of exciting and impressive projects from leading corporations into design lab that address the human-centered design topics, for the better quality of life. Though well-deserved, his retirement will certainly be missed, and I'm very positive on that side. Don has always been willing to take up often tough and complex problems of our society and has buried himself into finding an approach to arriving at the solutions. Maybe there is no solution, but he will at least put himself in a situation where we'll arrive at a process where we can get to a solution. So Don is also concerned with the future of the world in many ways with respect to education, poverty, healthcare, community service, as well as elderly care and processing other topics that are relevant to achieving a better quality of life. Along the path he has traversed in his long life journey, he has also left impressions of his personality, both positive and negative. His passion for user experience is non-compromising, and in defending this aspect in any product design and questioning those who have compromised that aspect of the US for other reasons has invited a lot of criticism. His own explanation of the rule, yes, but, and, is absolutely brilliant in the sense where he says, even if an idea is truly marvelous and exceptional, it will have the flaws, and we should allow constructive feedback to make that idea work. In some ways, it also reflects his own personality, in terms of the way he addresses these challenges. Among his many publications, we all know, people have already spoken, his book, The Design of Everyday Things, is certainly a classic. And I can tell with my experience at the World Design Organization that design students all over the world have benefited from such an inspiring work early in his days. Let me share a few of my personal experiences with Don. I had the pleasure of spending quality time with Don in Shanghai as part of the advisory board members of Tongji University a few years back. During this time, I also saw him enjoying like a child, his new toy at that time, a Microsoft Surface device. And he was showing me the little tricks, he has mastered within a short period of time since he had the device, and showing how useful it is for a designer, especially when you're sitting in a conference and learning. You want to quickly do a little sketch or a drawing and send it to some people. Also do some notations of the speaker. So it was a fantastic experience for me sitting next to him and learning how to use such a novel and new device. I also traveled with him to IBM studios in Shanghai, and I saw his abundant energy and enthusiasm in meeting with 60 plus young Chinese UX designers who were pouring over each other to grab Don's attention. And he was patiently listening to each of the young designers' projects and questioning them on what they were doing, especially some of them were in the medical device, related to UX they were doing. Don also learned, during the whole process of my, relationship with him about what the new WDO, we were called ICSID back then. And he also learned under my leadership, what are the new things we are doing. And in so learning, he came back to San Diego and started the process to make UCSD a member of our organization, World Design Organization. And in the process, in his own way, he also gave me a feedback on the process of how to simplify a person who wants to become a member of WDO, rather than asking, this whole 20-page questionnaire and that kind of stuff. So I can't forget that, so we're kind of making changes. Further, we also work with the city of San Diego and private entities to make quality design events such as the D4SD. I had the pleasure and privilege of being on one of them earlier. And the announcement, I was not going to mention it today, Don, but the announcement by Bob and few others were, overwhelming that, they were talking about the coming bid for World Design Capital in 2024. I'm so proud to hear from your team that, you were instrumental in creating that little energy for your city of San Diego. And I wish the very best, and I hope that San Diego wins the coveted title of World Design Capital in 2024. My best wishes are there for the city to become the next World Design Capital. In 2019, I was also discussing with Pradeep, the then director of NID in Ahmedabad, about celebrating the 40th anniversary of the historic Ahmedabad Declaration signed between NID, UNIDO, and ICSID. The reason this declaration is very important is this was the first ever design declaration. That time we were not looking at sustainable development in a big way, but this was the first ever major event that happened outside of Europe in the Asian territory. So we were looking at celebrating the 40th year, and we were thinking, who should we invite? And I said, okay, why not we just ask Don, let me do the asking, And then I came back, from India to my home here in San Jose. And then I talked to Don. He was saying, oh, Srini, you want me to go to India? how many hours is that travel? I said, about 22 hours, Then he was a little bit hesitant, but that was just only a little small, maybe 5 minutes of hesitation. Then he said like, wow, I love NAD. I love Professor Ranjan, so I'll make it happen. You just go ahead and do everything, commit, and I'm going to come. So it was such a joy for me personally, as well as for all the design community in India to have him. And he was mobbed everywhere he was going there. Such a great event it was. And during that visit, a lot of people, companies wanted to, he said no to all of these people. He said, I want to meet the students. I want to create a workshop. I want to talk to them. And in addition to that, if I have time, I want to go to some nonprofit and local community, which is not internationally known, but I want to go and really find what they are doing. So I had the pleasure of accompanying him to an organization called Seva, which was for women, to create an organization run by women to make them independent so that they can earn a decent living in Ahmedabad. During my visits to Design Lab, I had the occasion to meet with him. It so happened my first visit was during summertime. There were not many students. So Don had all of me, and we were walking through he showed me the entire facility, and we walked through the supposedly the new railroad that was coming up, to connect Tijuana. And during that visit, it was amazing to see, walking with him. He said, can we walk? I said, yeah, we can walk. But I must tell you, it was an effort to keep pace with him, with his brisk walk, around the campus. So Don is not as hard a nut as people think of him to be. He's got a maybe a little harder shell, but inside the shell is a very soft, harder person from my personal experience. And I'm really enjoying, and I want to celebrate that experience with all of us out here. Of course, he's a very meticulous guy, and he doesn't mince words. If you don't pay attention to what you are saying, he's not telling you to say something. If you don't pay attention to what you do or what you're saying, and then he will let you know in a very direct way, but not in an offensive way. So that's what I found him. And he's also very open to listen. For a man of his stature and his experience and his credibility, he's also a very simple human being to listen to what is being told, so that he always explores, okay, is there a better way to do it? I'm willing to listen. Maybe I said something, but you have something, please tell me. I'm happy to learn. So that's the simplicity of a human being that, I love, and I really enjoy his, conversations, whenever we do. And the other major initiative that he has taken just during the pandemic time is his new passion for creating the future of design education. I don't know how many of you know, where I am privileged to be one of the members working in his team. This is a very ambitious project to bring educators and practicing designers from all over the world to discuss and figure out what could be done to make a design education more effective, and in regions which are not known to design, and how can we create the quality of education to be on par with the education that's happening in the most famous schools that are there around the world. So that's a very, very noble effort. Now with this retiring Don, I hope you will find more passion and more time to spend on your pet project, your latest pet project. So I guess I can go on and on to talk about Don in my own way for a long, long time. But given the constraint and people have been waiting, so I would like to hear from Don. I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity. And on behalf of myself, I also from WDO, I want to wish Don, wish you a very, very happy retired life, and continue your pursuit of excellence in whatever else you're going to do. Best wishes to you and Jill for the rest of the journey. And I hope to be in touch with you, Don, to get more inspired. Also, in closing, I want to wish the incoming director, Nguyen, the very best to come in the role of a director of Design Lab in UCSD. So you're going to fill in the shoes of Don. It's going to be a big challenge, but I'm sure you will enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Srini. And with this, last but certainly not least, it's time to hear from Don Norman himself. So without further ado, Don, please take it away. We'd love to hear from you.
Wow, okay. Yes, what I wanted for this event was the best way to honor me is what you did, is I wanted to hear what is going on in the design lab, some of which you've heard, not all of it. My proudest accomplishments are my students, including those in the organizations I've headed, many who've gone on to illustrious careers, and even sometimes students I haven't known, but that are part of the organization and that come back many years later to say that they enjoyed my doing this, that, or the other. Or some students who came back and said they didn't enjoy the way I used to cut them down, but now they kind of enjoy it thinking about it. It's been an interesting life. I'm honored by the people who are here now. It's very hard to read the participants list. It's too big and it keeps shifting around. But one of the first people I met when I arrived at UC San Diego in 1966 was Erwin Jacobs, who one day told me, oh, he's going to quit and start a company. And I'm very smart about these things. I said, why would you want to do that? Yep. For those of you who don't know, one of his companies he only started two, was Qualcomm. A person who's known me the longest, I think the person who's still alive who knows me the longest is Dick Atkinson. And as you may know, that our offices today are in Atkinson Hall. Dick Atkinson I knew when I was a graduate student in the 1950s. And in fact, my very first publication was in a book that he edited. So it's really kind of a privilege to be in Atkinson Hall, where he also still has an office. He once tried to hire me to go to Stanford, so interesting. When I look at the list of people, it's just amazing. So many of my former students are here. Some of them from far away, Yoshio Miyake in Japan, and Akira Okamoto, who's not one of my students, but is one of my translators, who's also in Japan. So people from far, and the person closest to me is just across the street from my house where I'm sitting, Bruce Wheeler, who's actually in the bioengineering department here. And I could go and list all the people who are here. It's amazing, but I'm sure I'll miss some of you because it's hard to find them on the list. But thank you very much. It's really an honor to see so many of you, some of whom I haven't seen for years. And a number of my former graduate students I think it's about 7 or 8 of my former graduate students. I know Jonathan Gruden is here. And well, as I said, if I try to go list the names, I will miss some of you, so I won't. So thank you, Srini. Just a comment about Srini. You know, I don't trust what he says because he just says too many nice things. And, you know, he would give me the shirt off his back. In fact, he did. I mean, here it is. I'm not wearing it, but I saw him wearing this.
Dawn.
And I said, that looks very nice. Where did you buy it? I'd like to go buy one just like it. And he looked at me and he just took it off and gave it to me. And I've loved it ever since. It's a very typical Indian dress. This is from Ahmedabad, which is the northwest corner of India, where the National Institute of Design is. So let me start though with my history here. About almost exactly 7 years ago, in January 2014, Pradeep Khalsa came to my home in Palo Alto to convince me to return to UCSD and start a design program. And I said no. I didn't need a job. I didn't want a job. I was too busy writing, traveling, serving on boards. He came to my house 3 different times, and I came and visited him here in San Diego. And I visited my old friends, Scott Clemmer and Jim Holland. And in the end, it was the fact that they were here, plus the instructions that Pradeep gave me. What he told me was I could do anything I wanted with 2 conditions. Whatever it was, it had to be important and exciting. So in June 2014, when we actually started the lab, working with Jim and Scott, the 3 of us established a design lab. And Pradeep deliberately did not put us in any school, division, or department because he wanted us to work across the university. That actually turns out to be difficult in a university like this where everything is centered around departments or divisions. But it was the correct decision because we now have faculty and students from engineering, social sciences, arts and humanities, the business school, the medical school, and maybe even others I don't know about. And by the way, I think it's wonderful when the design lab does things I don't know about, because to me, that means it's working. Because I don't like to be a leader. What I like to be is a facilitator. And what I like to do is gather people and hope that, and do whatever the magic is that gets them to do exciting work that makes a difference. And I think if you listen to the work that you heard, because that's what this lab is about, it's about the work that gets done. Notice most of it was very untraditional design work. So those people who think that design is making wonderful, pretty objects, well, part of design is, but it's not what we do. We are a field that does things and that builds things and things that make a difference. We really care that the things that we build will change the world, will make people's lives better. And that's different than most of our departments. We also cut across the departments because, in fact, when Marty Cooper was talking about the way of the future of the university, no, the future of the university should not have a school of design. The problem with the school of design is if you have a design school, then it doesn't reach the university because universities automatically make silos because the way our reward structure is, you have to be the best in the world at your discipline, which means you don't have time to work with other people. And so what's nice about design is we're doing real projects. And what I want is a university that's organized not around disciplines, but around activities. Because if you're doing an activity, you're forced to work with people with technology knowledge, people in many different technology departments and science departments and engineering departments, but you also, we're building things for people. So you need to work with people who understand people, which in UCSD means the social sciences, which includes a fair number of different disciplines. And we also need to work with, basically everybody, depends upon what we want to do. And so I want to focus about activities, not disciplines. And yeah, but everybody ought to understand design because design is a tool of thinking, a way of approaching a problem, and a way of not solving the symptoms, but solving the underlying causes. In engineering, people are really good at solving problems, but it's rare that the engineer sits back and asks, was this the right problem? And what designers like to do, we have what's called in Zen, the mind of the beginner. We don't know the work, we don't know the disciplines, we have to therefore learn them, and therefore we have an open mind and we ask questions. And those questions allow us to see things that the people who are experts don't see anymore. And then we can build across the disciplines, taking the knowledge of each of the separate activities and create something new and wonderful, again, that benefits society. So, I was appointed for a 5-year term. And in the 6th year of my 5-year term, I told the administration that, well, I would like to step down. I told them I'd like to retire for the 5th time. You see, I've failed at retirement. I told them that I had succeeded. I thought I'd started a young, vibrant, innovative group that is running by itself. And it's now time to let a new person take over, someone who could build on what we've accomplished while also moving us into new areas. The administration did a national search. Various things like coronavirus interfered with the timing. So I extended my 5-year appointment until the 7th year. And I said, I'll retire December 31st, 2020. It's like 7.5 years, which is also the week that I became 85 years old. And I thought, oh, that's a good marker. So we now have a new director, who you've seen, who will start at the end of March. And I'm really delighted to welcome Mai to the Design Lab. She comes from the field of city and regional planning, and she was a director of the Center for Community Capital in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And what's interesting is that's an area we don't work in. And it's an important area. And most designers don't work in that area. And bringing human-centered design into city and regional planning is going to be very powerful. It'll extend our work and make us relatively unique in the world, which is what I want the Design Lab to be, in bringing design approaches to whole new disciplines. Now, I am stepping down as director, but that means I'm simply becoming yet another faculty member emeritus. I still intend to keep busy. I'll use my good friend Marty Cooper as a model. He's in his 90s, and he just published this book. I mean, it just came out. It's a really wonderful book. It's about cutting the cord. The cell phone has transformed humanity, and it's by Marty Cooper, the father of the cell phone, because he led the team, and he likes to emphasize it was a team effort. He led the team at Motorola that built the very first cell phone, which you can see here. It used to be called a brick. And gee, I say, I'm only 85 and he's in his 90s. So, hey, I can manage another 2 or 3 books. That'd be kind of neat. So that's one of the things I would do. But basically, here's what I'm going to do, 3 things. Building the design community of San Diego. Michelle Morris, our associate director, is a person who's really brought together all the different people in the design community of San Diego, from the educators of all K-12 through the other universities, and companies and civic leaders in a wonderful way. And the 2 of us together tried to piece together all the designers in the city, because mostly the people in San Diego said, there's no design community here. Well, we found thousands and thousands of people. And so we started a nonprofit organization, the Design Forward Alliance, to try to bring together the design community. Pradeep was pissed when we did that. He said, why did you do that? Why shouldn't it be UCSD that does this? Why are you giving it away as a nonprofit for somebody else? And the answer is community-based design. If you want to do something for people, you shouldn't. You should let the people do it. And then you can facilitate, and you can inventor, and you can advise them. But if the people who are going to be served don't do it themselves, you won't get buy-in from them. They won't understand it. They won't appreciate it. Even if what they do is exactly what you intended to do for them, they have to do it themselves. So we felt that if we wanted to build the design community, it has to be the design community that does the building. We don't want the big university up in the north saying, oh, this is how you should build the design community. No, they have to do it themselves. So that was step 1. But step 2, we said a great thing to do is become the world design capital. And we're going to apply, as you've heard several times, to have the San Diego-Tijuana region become the world design capital. And we have support from prominent civic leaders in the Tijuana, San Diego region, including the mayors of both cities. Barbara, I'm really sorry that we're not going to work with you on this. I would have loved to do that, but we will work with you in other ways. I'm speaking to Barbara Bree, who I believe is still in the audience, who was actually the candidate for mayor. But we will keep working with you because we really like the kind of things that you and your husband do. So we have the support of the prominent civic leaders in the Tijuana, San Diego region, including both mayors. It's a region that a recent book called The Third Country, 2 countries, 2 cities, 1 community. And the World Design Organization said, no, you can't have 2 cities applying for this. And we're going to say, so what? Do it. Make a difference. 2 cities, 2 countries, but it is 1 community. Now, in order to get this award, we have to demonstrate the design has led to enhanced living and experiences for the people in the region. Changes must be sustainable and permanent. And actually, even if we don't win the competition, we will have helped improve the city in ways that will be long lasting, which is a wonderful contribution to the community. But you know, serendipitously, just got appointed as a new director, and her work can really help, because the kind of work she does is the kind of work that's visible, that makes real changes in the way people live. And it's these things that make visible and societal differences. A problem with design is even when we do wonderful designs, that we do a new cell phone or a new application or a new way of searching or a new way of doing contact tracing or a new way of whatever, it's invisible. But when you do things in city planning, when you do things in construction, you do things in architecture, it makes a real difference. People see it and they live it, and it changes how they live. And bringing in human-centered design to make sure that that really works for the people is going to be a winning combination. So that's one project, become the world design capital. That's a long project. As you know, it's 2024 seems a long way away, but actually the application is due March 31st this year. Okay, second project. I think design is a way of thinking. It could be applied to anything, much more than just devices and services. In fact, as you heard today in today's presentations. In fact, this morning, the US State Department had a Zoom discussion with me to ask how they could improve their operations. The most difficult of the tasks they faced turn out to be organizational structure, with a large number of different internal divisions, each doing very different things. They don't very well collaborate. It's an incredible array of activities and requirements. We're talking about actually the internal information technology structure for the State Department, not the external. And of course, they're severely hampered in doing their work because security is such a critical feature. It makes life very difficult to use things. So they're using design thinking, but it's not enough. Design thinking is not enough. So can designers really help on these large problems? Can designers help in societal major issues? Most of them can't, because the most designers are still being taught craft skills. So in fact, Marty had it right when he said, when you're doing design, you must also take courses in the other disciplines. Absolutely. We need to change the way we train designers. And actually, the person who called me is a good example of the kind of person we want. He's a very senior member of the State Department, a former career US diplomat, former director of the Office of E-Diplomacy, electronic diplomacy. But he also has a graduate degree from UCSD's Graduate School of International Relations and Pacific Studies, what is today called the School of Global Policy and Strategy, which is a broad range of topics. So Michael Meyer, who's in the design lab and a member of the Rady School of Management, and we wrote an article on how disciplines such as medicine and management changed from basically folklore and intuitive knowledge to deep, substantial, evidence-based actions. Well, an executive at IBM's really large design group, 2,500 designers, offered IBM's help in implementing these ideas. So we created this huge initiative. It's sponsored by the UCSD Design Lab, by IBM Design Group, by the World Design Organization, Srinivasan. We have a steering committee of 16 senior designers from 7 countries, half in industry, half in academia, and 600 people across the world who have volunteered to help. Young students, senior, older, design practitioners, executives, academics, deans, people from every continent with a pluriverse of backgrounds and opinions. This is going to be a large and difficult initiative. We're now in year 2 of what's going to be a 3 to 4 year project. But we hope this will change the way that designers are educated all over the world, not just at UCSD, not just the United States, but across the world. That's the second thing I hope to do. And I spend a lot of time on that already. And the third thing is what I will almost definitely do. When I start a new activity in my life, I usually don't have any clues to what I'm doing. I don't understand what I'm doing. I wander about. I try this, try that, and then eventually it starts to gel. That's how I've started all the activities that I've ever done. And when it gels, it's usually a new gelling, a new approach, a new way of viewing these issues. And so I write a book about it. Well, I've now written 20 books, so this will make 21 or 22. And I hope it does as well as this book. I mean, Marty was just asked to talk about this book to the National Academy of Engineering. They've never asked me, gee. So that's something to look forward to. Marty, you are my model. I'm going to do what you've done. And as it says here in the back by Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, Cutting the Cord, Marty's book, recognizes that innovation has always been about both standing on others' shoulders and collaboration. And yeah, that's the secret to doing great work. So I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you for this delightful afternoon. And I'm just delighted with how the design lab has turned out. And I'm just delighted to watch in which directions it's now about to move. Welcome to UCSD, Maya. Thank you.
Thank you all. If anyone wouldn't mind putting your mics on, or a little clap for Don. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don, for all of your leadership, everything you've given San Diego, UCSD, the design community. We are all eternally in your debt. This does conclude our event. So if you'd like to stay on, Don is available to mingle and chat with others for a few minutes. We also ask that you please sign Don's memory book, which will be put into our paste in the chat momentarily. We'll be collecting your stories from memory book until February 15th. This does conclude, so thank you all very much.
Congratulations to you, Don, and everyone. And we'd like to just play one closing tune for you. So this is
Oh, please do. I very much enjoyed the opening music, so thank you.
All right.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.